Okay, so it's 3 minutes past 10, so I propose we start. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see so many attendees. Welcome to ACER's Unit Investment Costs Workshop on European energy infrastructure costs. And first, let's go through the house rules. So this webinar is recorded, and the recording will be put on ACER's website. Also, the presentation will be put to our site. And regarding your interactions, so if you have any questions, just please put them in the chat, and we try to go through the questions during the presentation. Also, the microphones in the beginning are muted, so if one would like to intervene, please raise your hand and we give you a word so that you can speak. Okay, so we're about 71. Okay, nice to see so many. Maybe first I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jaka Žvab. I'm in ACER's infrastructure team, working as a policy officer, mainly dealing with system development topics, and especially with projects of common interest. Now I give a word to the colleagues from the consultancy company that were working with us for the past years. So that's company PwC, and please, Andre and Ivana.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, Jaka. I hope you can all hear me well. So let me just quickly introduce ourselves and our team. So we are from PricewaterhouseCoopers, based in Slovakia. We are the consultants hired by ACER to help with this project, with the preparation of unit investment costs indicators and report. My name is Ondrej Šebaň. I'm leading the strategy and regulatory consulting practice here at PwC in Slovakia, focusing also on the energy sector, and I was leading the project. With me today is also my colleague Ivana Sabaka. We will be presenting today the overall project, the approach, methodology that we used, and the process, and also some of the results that we have as an outcome of our project. In our team, we also have Ivo Doležal. Ivo Doležal is our partner from Slovakia, responsible for the overall consulting practice in Slovakia, with whom I worked also on other projects in energy sector. He should join us shortly as well. And among other people, we also had in our team Valerio Gori from Italian practice, who was actually our expert on unit investment cost, because he had experience from similar projects, although not from energy sector, but similar exercises were done also in other sector, for example, in railways or road sector. So that's a brief introduction of our team. So nice to meet you, and I think I will now give word back to Jaka to do a quick introduction of the project, and then we will continue with the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Andre. So in chat, I can see that some people have issues with the sound, but okay, most report the sound is fine. So I propose that we continue. Okay, going to the next slide.
On the structure reference cost find on the link that we have here. So it's a website dealing with this topic. There is also a report uploaded, and there will be a recording and the presentation from today. So more information, you're invited to get there. Going to the next slide. So about the agenda for today. In the beginning, we have a brief project overview. Then we go to the methodology presentation. So how the project has been tackled. I hope you can hear me well.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes, it's much better.
Okay, perfect. Good. Sorry for that. So yeah, about the agenda, we go through the project overview, then we present the methodology. Of course, the main part is the data collection outcome. We won't present all the indicators, but at least how to take a look at the statistics and how to read the indicators. There is going to be one example shown. The colleagues from the consultancy company PwC did quite a huge research of the studies that are dealing with the new infrastructure categories, and they will present their work there. Also, one part is the new feature that we introduced. So it's like a calculator model, so for prediction of unit investment costs for the future. And then we tackle also some recommendations for the future unit investment cost task that ACER is about to do. Okay, now about the project overview. So what is the background of unit investment cost indicators? So in the past, ACER has already been obliged to provide reports on unit investment cost indicators for energy infrastructure. At that time, in year 2015, it has been one-time event, and it was 2 reports, one on electricity and one on gas. And now with the new 10-year regulation from the last year, there is a obligation for ACER in Article 11.9 to come up with indicators every 3 years. So the indicators should cover the categories as it's written in the regulation on electricity infrastructure, hydrogen network infrastructure, smart gas grids equipment, electrolyzer facilities, and carbon dioxide networks. The later two are not that commonly commissioned around Europe. Therefore, we have not yet received any of the data set, but still in the next 2 years, we expect that some results could be also coming from there so that we can provide also indicators for those two. Furthermore, in this exercise, ACER also collected the somehow natural gas grid commission projects so that we could have it as a basis for the estimation of costs for hydrogen networks and also for carbon dioxide pipelines. Okay, if there are no questions, we can go also to the next slide, which is what are the main purposes of the unit investment cost indicators. So in a way, it can help ENSOs when indicating the cost benefit when they are having the cost benefit analysis. It's also guidance for project promoters when assessing the investment and performing the analysis, especially associated with public finances. The unit investment costs could be supporting NRAs when they need to make informed cross-border cost allocation decision. And in general, such a task evaluates the transparency in general on the European level, so to see how much the infrastructure costs, and also it can better explain the cost drivers for the infrastructure categories. If we move to the next slide, I give a word to Ivana and Andre now to present the process.
Okay, thank you, Jaka, for introducing us into the project, into the unit investment cost project. I will go through the methodology, data collection, outcome of the data collection, and the review of the results in the coming minutes. And first, I would like to say that the project took over almost a year to complete. Each deliverable and each interim step in the process was consulted with the national regulatory authorities, and the process of consultation intensified towards the end. Their feedback was taken into account and implemented in the report and in production of the results as such. So starting with the methodology, or starting with the beginning of the project, we defined the asset categories based on the infrastructure categories that were defined in the regulation. The regulation defined them quite broadly. We tried to basically tighten up the grasp on particular assets. They were rather clear for the traditional infrastructure as it was done in 2015, but we had to do some additional research for the new infrastructure categories and define the assets based on the functionalities mentioned in the regulation. So for example, for transmission of hydrogen, we defined the hydrogen pipelines. For its storage, we defined the geological formations and so on. So we also defined the technical parameters that we must collect the data for in order to produce meaningful indicators, unit indicators, and we also defined cost specifications such as currency and tax status. The data was collected tax-free and in the currency euro. The exchange, applying the exchange rate, was on the side of the project promoter. Yeah, Kyle, hand the floor to you.
I'll take over this slide. So for the purpose of data collection, ACER has developed an IT tool with the name Unique. So this IT tool is for the purpose of unit investment cost data collection. So the project promoters that have been involved here are already familiar with the tool. We have been starting the period for collecting of data in November last year, and we concluded in the beginning of March. So we left like 3 months and a half to project promoters to be able to submit the data. So we extended the deadline at that time in order to have a bigger database so that we can come up with robust indicators so that we have more populated tool. And yeah, it's supposed to be quite easy to use. In the future, we have some upgrades in mind, especially to be able to access it without being registered, at least to have these indicators being visible there. And the tool is also going to be used for the future tasks of ACER's unit investment cost indicators to be produced as it is requested in regulation. And we also intend to have like a future estimation of unit investment costs feature implemented by end of the year. So everything will be notified on ACER's website when we have some updates. So feel free to visit the website and see whether the new features are there. Okay, that's about the tool. So please, Ivana, you can continue.
Okay, so once the data was collected, once the collection was finalized, we adjusted all the asset costs for inflation based on their investment year. If 2 years were provided, we took the average year -1. Then we applied the thresholds to the data set. That in practice meant that we excluded assets that were shorter than 5 kilometers in the case of pipelines and overhead and electricity lines. And we proceeded to unit identification and subcategorization. I'll explain the process showing the next slide. So we coupled the data, the cost data, or we tried to find a correlation between the cost data and individual technical parameters. So for example, as you can see in the slide, for AC substation, we found a correlation between the number of transformers in the upper graph and the overall cost of the substation, and correlation between the overall cost of AC substation and the number of bays installed in this substation. That's an example that helped us to to basically determine what the unit should be. And it also helped us to group the data into subcategories that would make sense based on the cost level or other secondary technical parameter that somehow divided the database into meaningful groups. Then we proceeded to excluding the outliers. Each subcategory was treated separately, and the outliers were excluded based on the interquartile range method. That meant in practice that we excluded every value that was basically we multiplied the interquartile range by 1.5, and this value was subtracted from the first quartile and added to the third quartile. These two values then define the limits of considered data. Everything that was beyond was excluded as an outlier for each subcategory separately. The data was also checked for its quality and for some inconsistencies. If we saw some inconsistencies, we were always trying to identify why it could be. Sometimes it lied on the origin, sometimes it might be a specific asset for which we were looking into the comments provided by the project promoter to find an answer. Finally, the data was used to calculate the mean, first and third quartile, and the median, and thereby define the indicator and its reference values.
Maybe, Joanna, we have one question in chat. So was it meant first quartile or of 2022 or, but okay, that's more related to time. I think it's what you were discussing was statistics. So quartile 1 and quartile 3, yeah.
Yeah. Of the data set. The value
yeah.
that presented the first quartile value and the third quartile value.
The reference
so the data
date has...
the first quartile on the distribution of data.
Exactly. Okay, thanks.
All right, so proceeding to the outcome of the data collection, we collected 327 projects, and they included 510 assets. Not all assets or the indicator could not be produced for all assets, as some asset categories or some asset subcategories didn't accumulate sufficient number of items. If the number of items in a subcategory was lower than 3, we were not producing an indicator in order to assure confidentiality of individual projects. So in other words, we were trying not to disclose any particular information about individual projects. Therefore, we also do not disclose the origin of individual subcategories. It might point to actual projects, but we disclose the origin of asset categories as such. So you can see that there is a prevalence of assets from particular countries. For example, for overhead lines, it's Spain. There is a prevalence of assets from Denmark and Spain for underground cables, and so on and so forth. This might help you to navigate when you try to use the indicator, as much as comparing probably the cost level in the country with your country, and therefore seeing whether the indicator is well, I don't want to say reliable, but whether the indicator might be rather an overestimation or underestimation of the cost in your country. Similarly, we accumulated the data for low carbon gases infrastructure. They mainly came from Germany, which is also important to take into account when considering the results. Okay, now I would like to proceed to sort of a guideline on how to read and interpret the indicator values. I have already mentioned that this is an indicator that might not fully represent the the actual cost of a project in a particular country. It is an overall European indicator based on the samples that we collected. So if you look for the indicator, you would open the report and basically list the asset that you're interested in, find the section results and conclusion, and find the results in this table. The left column, the first column, represents the subcategories for the overhead lines. They are based on the voltage level and the number of circuits. And you find the results in the following columns. So you find the mean, quartile values, and the median. It is noteworthy, or it is good to always look at the number of assets when you try to figure out this if this indicator is representative, is broadly representative, or one of the less representative ones. It is also advisable to look at the reservations. They often point to let's say shortcomings of the data samples for the subcategory. For example, for overhead lines, we noticed that there is I would say high level of or high. There are differences, significant differences in cost in various countries. In this case, we were, for example, trying to couple the countries into some regional categories. However, the cost level varied also within a region. So the indicator for a region would not make that much sense. And it is also good to look at the sample size in the section 611 in the report, because there you can find the origin of the majority of the data in the asset category. So for overhead lines, it is very likely that the majority of the assets that produce the indicator come from Spain, as the country's assets are prevalent in the group.
Maybe, Ivana, before we continue, we have one question from Roberto. Yes. So maybe, Roberto, would you like to take the floor and ask the question? Okay, if not, I can read his question in chat. So he's finding unit investment cost model very useful considering the voltage breakdown. But main question on his side is what are the sizes or rated? Is it in rated power in megawatts or MVA? Considering as an inputs, especially in the assets like overhead lines, underground lines, substation cable, submarine cables, and AC substation and transformers. So is it? I guess the question is if it's the unit in megawatts or MVA.
The unit for the investment cost is in euro per kilometer.
Or it depends on the specific asset.
Yes.
And on the data that we are
for the lines. For other assets, it differs. It's always stated in the report. Does it answer?
Okay, maybe I would ask Tiasha to allow Roberto to open the mic.
Hello. Thank you for
please.
letting me open this question. Yeah, no, it's not. The question is not related with the unit. It's related with what are the inputs considered as megawatts or MVA, because all these assets have a voltage level, but also have a rated power, which describe the size of each asset. So the question is, what are the rated power inputs considered?
The data was collected for the rated power inputs, but they are not considered in calculation of the unit investment cost in this report.
Okay, so you only you only consider the voltage level, and then the size is, let's say, for simplicity reasons, skip it.
Maybe I would add to that. I mean, we requested, or we tried to collect also the technical data of each asset. So, for example, also this size or capacity in megawatts or megavolt amperes, and depending on how many data points we were able to collect, we were able to calculate the indicators in certain granularity for different assets. So where we had sufficient data also for these subcategories, for example, by capacity, we calculated those also a breakdown by those different subcategories. In case of transformers, or in case of overhead lines, this is the capacity. In case of some other assets, it's a different technical parameter. But in many cases, we did not have sufficient data in that granularity to be able to, for example, calculate a cost of overhead line per kilometer for different subcategories by size. So it always depends, and in the report you will see if we were able to if we had sufficient data to calculate also the indicators by subcategory, but if not, we only calculate it for this, let's say, global category.
Yeah, okay, that answered my question on the underground and overhead line. Thank you. That's clear to me. And what about transformer? Can you expand a little bit more, if it's possible, just 30 seconds, like transformer or substation, because that's also important.
All right. So the data for transformers was initially not collected in the granularity that we expected. We additionally requested the data to be submitted. Some data was submitted, but again, we stumbled upon the richness of the data, and the granularity was not sufficient to calculated for many categories of subcategories of transformers, but there are two indicators for transformers. One is per voltage level, if I'm not mistaken, and one is per the rating. So one is in megavolt amperes and one is in kilovolts. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, just because I was reading the report and also checking the Excel file, and across the Excel file, I was like, yeah, making the main question, like, what's the size of this or the rated power of these transformers? But now that you say, obviously, it's really hard to get all that granularity, and so you filter it up at the end, only considering voltage level. So thank you.
Yeah. We also suggested for the future data collection, we suggested that some of these parameters are mandatory for them to be collected and taken into account when calculating the unit investment cost in the future. Okay, now switching back to the presentation, I would also like to point your attention to this particular example of AC substations. We again had some issues with the granularity of the data for individual assets in this category. And therefore, we first worked with the database that we collected. We produced several indicators based on the availability of the data. Therefore, you can see that in the category, in the different tables for different indicators, we have the different number of assets, the total number of assets. They basically represent the number of assets for which we collected that particular information. And the way I would advise the participants to use these indicators is the following. So we collected the data for the number of bays, and therefore we produced the indicators based on the number of bays that's the subcategorization, and the cost is per asset, as you can see. So you can calculate one indication of your costs. Let's imagine you want to build an AC substation with 2 bays that is air insulated and new. So you would expect it to cost somewhere between 3 to 17 million. That range is enormous, and therefore you look at other indicators to sort of tighten up the range in which your cost might be located. So you, let's say, look at the cost per kilowatt, where you need to multiply the 275 kilovolt, because let's imagine that that is your AC substation's voltage level, by 31,000, and you get to the range of, let's say, 8 to 9 million. That sort of sets you somewhere else on the range. Or tightens up the range. And let's say you have 2 bays and you multiply the 2 bays by the information provided in the last table, which is the mean value per bay is 1.2 million. You multiply it by 2 bays and you get the 2.4 million. I would say the indicators differ quite widely still, but they offer more clarity than the indicator that was provided first per asset.
Maybe just to add here on top of what Ivana said, as you can see for AC substations, when you have a look at the number of assets that we were able to collect it for different subcategories, you can see that here we had a lot of data points that we could use. Therefore, we produced indicators for AC substations from different point of views. So this number of data points that we collected allowed us precisely what Roberto was asking before. It allowed us to calculate the indicators for different subcategories. So when you will be trying to use the report for AC substations, you can consider different point of views, whether you would prefer to use the indicator per asset, per number of bays, or the indicator per the subcategory of the capacity of the substation, or per kilovolt. You have different options that you can use, and that's precisely because we were able to collect a lot of data for AC substations specifically, and therefore we were able to calculate these indicators per different subcategories and per different points of view. So that's just to add on what Ivana said.
All right. Okay, I'll switch back to the presentation and continue with the next chapter on the results of the research. So additionally,
maybe Ivana, before we continue, I would just like to say that we have just take a look at the 2 examples. So for AC substation and or headlines of the 220 kV, but we did not want to go through all the unit investment cost indicator results, because it would take too much time, and we just wanted to present how to take a look at the numbers and what is the meaning and the thinking behind. And for all the rest you're interested in, you can also see yourself in the report. So just to have some guidance now. Okay, let's continue.
All right. So within the scope of this project, we also performed a sort of research or a short meta study on the new infrastructure categories and their cost estimates. So first, we started with the identification of individual assets. As I've already mentioned in the beginning, we defined particular asset types, such as hydrogen pipelines, hydrogen storage, hydrogen compression stations, and electrolyzers of certain capacity. For that, we used the advice and the consultations of relevant stakeholders active in the field, such as Hydrogen Europe, Gas Infrastructure Europe, and also the national regulatory authorities. We also mapped the situation for individual assets, and just then we proceeded to the collection of cost data and general research, desk research on the topic that we summarized in the report, estimating the future cost for these assets. So for hydrogen and electrolyzers, we found data on compression stations, which according to the study by Han, the techno-economics of hydrogen compression are about 6.35 million per megawatt of the compression station's rated capacity. The storage of hydrogen in various geological formations varies a lot based on its overall capacity and the type of storage. We found some information on the caverns in particular. The hydrogen stored there should cost around 9 to 50 euros per kilogram of total capacity of the cavern. Again, the range is quite large, but it depends largely on the overall capacity and also location and other factors. As for large-scale electrolyzers with a capacity of more than 50 megawatts, we also used various sources, bottom-up analysis from Fraunhofer or a meta study for SAP are just two of the examples. But we have to note that the information is mostly just estimates. The costs are generally estimated to drop in the future, but there are some opposing voices to that, pointing to the fact that raising installation rate may raise the cost of precious metals and therefore electrolyzers that are produced with currently mature technologies. So it is good to, we also point the attention of the reader to forthcoming projects such as NEOM in Saudi Arabia, HyDeal or Hydrogen Holland in Europe for future cost information and development. And the estimates that we found on the large-scale electrolyzers of 40 to 200 megawatts in using the alkaline technology are about €500,000 per megawatt of its capacity. Okay, we were also trying to find some information on carbon dioxide networks. We mainly found the information on the pipelines used in such networks. So we used the research and the methodology used by the National Energy Technology Laboratory of US Department of Energy. They used the multiplicators of 1 to 1.5 times the cost of natural gas pipeline to estimate the cost of carbon dioxide pipeline, and we applied it to the database of natural gas pipelines that we collected during this exercise. We got the result ranging between 2 to 4 million per kilometer based on the diameter and therefore the capacity of the pipeline. And now we're heading to the presentation of the calculator model, which I think you've already received from Mr. Schwab. The model is really trying to be very simple and generic for the users to be able to use, for any user to use in their practice. You pick the infrastructure category to which
maybe Ivana, before we continue, we
belongs.
should emphasize that it's solely purpose of this indicator. So we have two parts. One has been data collection, so which means the data has been collected for the already commissioned projects. So this is like factual data, and the tool is meant for future, so for estimation, and it's based on the, let's say, predicted inflation rate. So it's nothing firm, but like a bit of a help to, I don't know, to the user who wants to foresee, let's say, what would be the costs of certain infrastructure for the future. So, and it's based on the values that are in the report itself. So this is like a basis, and then it's add up the inflation that could be foreseen in the future.
Okay, so as I've already mentioned, the model is very generic. You choose the infrastructure category under which your asset belongs. Then you choose the asset. For this case, we use the underground cables. You use the subcategory from the subcategories that we collected the data for. And you use the year of projection. The year of projection is the year when you want to commission your project. And based on that, we calculate the estimated cost. So to explain the results, in the first column, the first green column in the results, the UIC value is the value that we calculated for 2023. As for the current value is currently the same as the 2023, as we are in 2023. The current value will change in the future. So the next year, based on the real inflation that the model will be provided with. And the projection is the cost in the future based on inflation forecasts. Okay, then there is a sheet inflation in which you can change the inflation forecast for the future. You can either use the baseline or downside scenario of the European Central Bank, as we did in this presentation, or you can apply your customary inflation for your particular country or based on your own forecasts. And
okay,
now
we have two questions before we continue.
Yes,
so one is about the AC substations in the model of the Excel calculator. So in the model, we have the subcategories divided on per bay. So it's not yet taken into account the latest subdivision that we did. So with voltage and power. So the colleague Robert is asking whether this is intended to be updated or is it only in the report?
so far it's only in the report. We had this discussion. We feared it could confuse if we provide the model calculator is meant to simplify the use of the indicators. And we fear that if we somehow couple the indicators or provide several ones of them, it will cause confusion without the background provided in the report. So we are still contemplating, and if you feel like this would be valuable, then we can add it to the calculator. But so far it wasn't done because we feared it would cause confusion.
Okay, then we have another question from Ilya. So if we plan the update of the model regularly, that's a more question for ACER. And yeah, indeed, like I was discussing before, so we would like to implement this model in the unique tool, so ACER's tool that will be online. So this is like the beginning, the development of this feature, and then we would like to put it online so that every 3 years when we collect data, every 3 years when we have new indicators, this would be then automatically used in the model so that everything is updated. And also then one would be able to choose the years from which year to which year he's interested in the investment items, so that it would provide much more information and everything would be online. And tool is quite adaptable, so if there are some changes, if there are more information on the projects, and that we can provide more subcategories also to, let's say, to make a breakdown per capacity or per power, as we discussed before, we'll be able to do it. So it's intended to have updates every 3 years for sure. And of course, that also means that before every 3 years, so the deadline for ACER is 24th of April, meaning that we'll be also asking project promoters for data collection probably half a year in advance.
Okay. If we have all questions answered at the moment, we can.
One more question just arrived. So why the box plots in the unit investment cost model are not similar with the box plots in the report? For example, the interquartile range of the 110 to 150 kilovolt to circuit overhead line in the Excel is okay, it's a certain amount of euros. The box plot in the report, figure 4, have an interquartile range around, so it's a different values for the same category, if I understand correctly.
Okay, we will verify and come back to you if there's.
We can check later. So
yeah.
thanks for noting this and for spotting and letting us know. We'll check together, and then we can also, if there is a need, we will update the Excel model, and we can upload a newer version if there is a need for change. So there is also Simon asking if this Excel model is publicly available yet. Indeed, it's on ACER website. So it's the link of the on the second slide. You can also scroll through the slides. No, on the fourth slide, there is on top direct link. So we can on the bottom there are report of 2003 and the model, so you can download it there. Okay, so seems no more questions, so we can proceed.
Okay, so the final note of this presentation are recommendations for the future. And we have learned by doing this exercise, and we can recommend for the future that clear messaging and clear communication with the project promoters is very important to the quality of the results that we receive. The timing of the data collection should also be aligned with the needs of project promoters, as a timing colliding with some other data collection or major holidays such as Christmas or tax reporting season might cause some, well, lack of time for the project promoters to provide the data. We also suggest that next time there is a question, there's included a question on the cost driver provided by the project promoter. So if they feel like the main cost driver for their asset is material, they should write material. If it's labor cost, they should write labor cost, and they should also specify the percentage of this cost driver. It would really enhance clarity on some assets where we, from the data provided, could not figure out what the cost differences were caused by. We also suggest that the number or the type of technical parameters that are requested is limited to the minimum that is necessary for calculation of the unit investment cost for the non-mature assets. If we request way too much information for non-mature assets, it burdens the project promoter and does not really bring much to the overall or to the final result if there are few assets, only few assets available in that category. And we also find it necessary to make the unit determining parameters mandatory. It was done so this time as well, but as we have more clarity on what the unit determining parameters are now, it should be done so the next time as well. And by that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Yeah, maybe to complement the last 2 points you had. So we try to find a balance. So the amount of technical details we can request can be really huge, but if there is no sense in providing a unit investment cost indicator and added value, of course, it's just a burden for project promoters to deal with this data submission. Therefore, we try to still keep it to the minimum, but at the same time, we need to request enough data in order to provide some meaningful results at the end. And of course, certain parameters just need to be mandatory, and because otherwise there is no sense of having those indicators could not be provided. So which we have also seen in certain cases where we needed to go back to project promoters asking again for additional data so that we were able to produce the indicators. Okay, so I can take control, and I think we have just one more slide, which is questions from the audience. So we had already quite some questions in the chat, and now we would also give a floor to participants if you would like to raise any questions, so that we are a bit ahead of time. So we have quite a lot of time to answer your questions. Okay, we have another question from Vasiliki.
Yeah, I can answer.
Okay.
No, this sort of cost was not considered as. It is very hard to, first of all, define the question for the project promoter and for them to submit the data and to explain their individual situation. We had like box plot for comments, so they could provide us with additional comments on their project and explain, for example, why the cost is elevated compared to similar projects, but we did not have we did not somehow subtract it from the overall cost of the project.
Yeah, maybe just to add, I understand that Vasilik is probably asking, for example, if there was a construction of new power line somewhere and it required an upgrade of a substation somewhere else, whether this would be considered within the cost of the power line or of that individual project. And the simple answer is no. We were looking at the projects as a separate project. If there was a necessity to do an upgrade somewhere else in the network as a result of that project, for example, an upgrade of some transformer or AC substation, that could always be submitted as a separate project. So it should not be, and it was not included in the cost of that particular project.
Yes, so to answer Mr. Ilya, indeed, in the future, so new TENI obliges ACER to deal with CO2 pipelines, and categories can be inserted, so whichever categories. So we follow the regulation, and we're obliged to do it in 2 years' time from now. So far we have not received any of those assets, but we plan to do it. Even though it's not in the remit of ACER, these CO2 networks, but still we'll be collecting data. Now we have a platform where project promoters can submit data, so we're happy to do it.
So I think even within this project, we defined the data collection questionnaire for that, but it was not required to be published as an indicator in this report, but will be required in the future.
We have additional question from Andre. Do you want to tackle it, Ivana?
Well, as I've mentioned with the carbon dioxide, the US Department of Energy has some similar sort of research on the cost of carbon dioxide infrastructure. It is used there mainly to enhance oil production. So the Texas coast is basically has many of these pipelines, carbon dioxide pipelines. As for other assets, I cannot. We did not really look into other regions for comparison. We rather compared with the 2015 results for the traditional infrastructure assets. So I cannot give you an advice there. Sorry.
If I can recall, I think Oil and Gas Journal is collecting some data on the traditional gas and oil infrastructure in US, and they're providing some kind of unit investment costs for the infrastructure there. If you want to do some more investigation.
As for the hydrogen ready pipelines, the data was provided as the pipelines are already hydrogen ready. We did not receive the information whether it was repurposed or built. I think it was originally built as hydrogen ready natural gas pipeline. It wasn't repurposed, so we do not have the information on repurposing from this project.
And we had quite a few inputs for this hydrogen ready.
Well. Yep, that as well.
Okay.
So the estimation for polymer membrane electrolyzers for small electrolyzers is available. It's also in the report. As for the large installations, we did not find sufficient information to provide an indicator there. So we unfortunately have to wait. As far as I know, most of the large scale installations that are either planned or being built, they are alkaline technology.
Okay, I can address a comment from Andre. So about making comparison with interregional costs between EU and other regions, especially for the new energies. So indeed, yeah, thanks for this proposal. We can have a look and we can see if this is possible to be done in the future. But for these new categories, it's especially difficult because there is really limited amount of data available. So, and also with the electrolyzers above 50 megawatts, I think there was no information. So it's only the estimations. So as soon as we have the data, for sure, we'll try to extend the exercise and provide more details.
We also consulted Hydrogen Europe in the beginning of this project, and they themselves said that the information is not often published or not often revealed by the project promoters and operators of this infrastructure. So hopefully when there are more installations, the data will be more accessible. As for now, they are trying to keep confidentiality on their information.
So yeah, ACER would be happy to receive as much data as possible in order to provide more robust indicators. So that's also a call on the project promoters to take their time and efforts to provide us with sufficient data quality and amount of commissioned infrastructure, so that would be of a help of a wider audience across EU and probably also abroad. Okay, so if there are no further questions, we can go to the next slide, which is slide instructions. So we intend to have some interaction with you to get your feedback on our work and on the future expectations from your side. Therefore, we invite you in Microsoft Teams directly. You can click the link on top. It's a round item with S inside, and we have prepared some questions there. You can also go through the website of Slido, use the direct link. You can click on the link here on the slide or scan the QR code. So all the options are there. And yeah, let's start with the Slido. And we have the first question. So have you by any chance utilized the 2015 unit investment cost indicators and the reference values for any specific purpose in your work? So as we mentioned, ACER has produced the first two reports back in 2015, and we would just like to know how useful or how valuable do you find this work with it back then? I propose to have like 30 seconds to answer, to respond. Here it's a fixed list, so it's only the responses are available are yes, no, not applicable. So if it's not applicable to your work, then it's the third answer. Otherwise, yeah, yes or no. Okay, we have 35 responses and we are about 106 participants. Maybe we should wait a bit for the first question. So if somebody is still trying to connect to the Slido, a few more seconds. Okay, I propose that we go to the next question. Now, this question is about the utilization of 2023 unit investment cost indicators and their values. So, are you planning to use these outcomes from our report in your work? Do you find it useful? So, the fixed list is also yes, no. If you're not sure yet, it's maybe, and the third one is not applicable to your work. Okay, we have 35 responses, maybe before it was 40, so a few more seconds we can wait. Okay, 39. So I propose we go to the next question. Now we're asking you on practicality of the unit investment cost indicators that are presented in the report. So do you find them practical enough to be implemented? We just had the discussion today where the indicators have been explained and also the different approach that can be seen for certain subcategories where the more data has been provided. Okay, now I can see results. So if I was not answering, I could not have seen the results. Okay, now for the third question, I see. So most response are maybe. So participants are not sure yet. I propose to wait a few more seconds before we continue to the fourth question. Okay, thank you for providing the answer. So let's go to the fourth question. This is the open question, and we would ask you for which purposes you believe the unit investment cost indicators could be useful for you. So is it for the purpose of assessing the costs of future infrastructure you intend to commission, or plan? Is it for, let's say, for as if you're NRA, then for cross-border cost allocation purposes, or just to see the transparency of cost on EU level for certain type of infrastructure? And I think you can do multiple answers. Okay, so it's rough estimation of future cost. Market evolution information. Benchmarking storage investment in electrical grids for comparison of investment projects cost. Several, I would say, member states. Okay, assessing whether CBAs are in reasonable range. Good, okay, so it does its purpose. Justification of gas cost increase and price adjustment. Okay, apparently for hydrogen infrastructure development. Cost estimation, assessment of new projects, and preliminary estimations of greenfield renewable projects. So yeah, okay, so it's estimation of future cost. Good. Maybe a few more seconds we wait, and yeah, thanks for that many responses. We for sure it will help us to have a better insight on the purpose of our work. Okay, I propose we move to the next question. Question number 5. We have 7. So now it's about feedback for us. So what suggestion do you have for ACER and NRAs to enhance the unit investment cost indicators development for the future? So we have already received certain proposals in the chat before. So to extending the scope to comparing with non-EU unit investment cost indicators, if possible in the future, collecting more technical data, let's say. So we'd like to hear your feedback here. Okay, we have 11 answers. Apparently it's a difficult question, so let's wait for a few more minutes or seconds. So it's a collection of data on IT costs, let's say. Okay, that's one thing we can consider, not even not exactly sure whether it's in the competency of ACER, but still, but it also varies quite a lot from application to application of certain assets. So that might be also quite difficult. So unit investment cost per capacity, it's very important. We can agree with that, especially it's based on the firm data that we receive. Okay, enforcing more data submission from project promoters in order to have more subcategorization. Can share your review as well. Okay, make a more extensive segmentation range in order to adapt to some more realistic projects. We can agree, but especially like we mentioned already, it depends on the amount of firm data that we receive. So, but we believe as this is like first time exercise of this type, in the future we'll have more and more data, and so this is somehow the first time we're using this approach of collecting data directly from project promoters, and once we build a database, we can expect even better results, and it will be adding up. So every 3 years we'll be collecting data. Okay, I think we used enough time, so we received 21 responses. So let's go to the next question, which is number 6. Would you appreciate further guidance from NRAs and ACER, having like practical examples on how to use the unit investment cost indicator? So if you think the NRAs can help you with some guidance, not saying we have all the answers, but still we can try to see if we can do something in order to help on the usage of unit investment cost indicators. So this one is also the fixed list. It's the answers are yes, no, maybe, and not applicable if you're not using the unit investment costs indicators for your work. Let's wait a few more time. We have 27 responses so far. And then the last question awaits. So, okay, the previous one was yes. So anyways, okay, so we need to do some more work. No, it's it's based on the previous question. So the think organizing an additional ACER workshop on the practical use of unit investment cost indicators would benefit stakeholders, and of course, would you attend it? It's also 1 to 3 fixed responses, yes, no, and maybe. And if most of you answer with yes, like it seems to, then there is some work ahead of us as well. And we'll try to organize in the future some workshop as well. Okay, we have 27 responses, 28. We wait a bit more, and then we conclude with this interaction with you, with all the participants. Okay, nobody's against. That's good. Okay, we have 30 responses. I believe that's the around average response rate. So I propose that we conclude with the Slido and continue with the last slide, which is just a thank you to all participants for being part of this workshop. We hope it was informative, and especially thanks to all your inputs and your comments, questions. So it was nice that there is interest from your side. I would also like to thank our colleagues from the consultancy company PwC for their good work. It was a nice collaborating with them, and I give the word for the last words from their side.
Also from our side, thank you, Jaka, for organization of this meeting. We were very glad to be able to cooperate on this project, and we look forward for any future collaboration. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all, and we keep in touch. The presentation will be uploaded, the recording will be uploaded, and yeah, so every update we'll be doing on this topic will be on ACER's website. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.